Hey everyone, welcome to Hip Hop AI. In this video we are gonna see the social circumstances under which the hip hop culture was born. Hip hop is a cultural movement that emerged in the African American and Latino communities in the Bronx, New York City, in the late 1970s. Today, hip hop is a global phenomenon that has influenced music, fashion, art, and politics. But what were the social conditions that gave birth to hip hop? Let's find out. To understand the birth of hip hop, we need to look at the Bronx in the 1970s. The Bronx was a borough in New York City that was predominantly African American and Latino. The Bronx was also experiencing economic decline, political neglect, and social dislocation. The city government was cutting funding for social services, including education, housing, and healthcare. Unemployment was high, and poverty was widespread. Many buildings were abandoned, and the streets were dangerous. As I mentioned earlier, the Bronx was a borough in New York City that had a predominantly African American and Latino population. However, despite its diverse population, the Bronx was facing significant challenges in the 1970s. One of the most pressing issues was economic decline. The Bronx had been a hub of manufacturing and industry in the early 20th century, but by the 1970s, many of these jobs had moved to other parts of the country or overseas. This led to high levels of unemployment and poverty in the area. In addition, the construction of highways and other urban renewal projects had destroyed many neighborhoods and displaced residents, exacerbating the economic decline of the area. Another significant challenge facing the Bronx was political neglect. The city government of New York was struggling with budget deficits in the 1970s, and as a result, it cut funding for many social services, including education, housing, and healthcare. This had a significant impact on the Bronx, where schools were overcrowded and underfunded, housing projects were falling apart, and healthcare was difficult to access. Social dislocation was also a major issue in the Bronx in the 1970s. Many neighborhoods were segregated and isolated from each other, and racial tensions were high. Crime rates were high, and gang activity was common. This created a sense of danger and hopelessness for many residents, especially young people who were struggling to find a sense of belonging in a society that seemed to have turned its back on them. Despite these challenges, however, the young people of the Bronx found ways to create their own culture and express themselves through music, art, and dance. Hip-hop emerged as a form of self-expression, resistance, and empowerment for these young people, providing them with a way to assert their identity, dignity, and creativity in a society that denied them. In this context, young people in the Bronx started to create their own culture as a way to express themselves and cope with their challenging circumstances. Hip-hop emerged as a combination of different elements: DJing, MCing, graffiti writing, and breakdancing. The first hip-hop parties were held in community centers, parks, and abandoned buildings. DJs played funk and soul records, and MCs rapped over the beats. Graffiti artists painted murals on the walls, and breakdancers danced on the floor. Hip-hop was a form of self-expression, resistance, and empowerment for young people in the Bronx. Hip-hop culture emerged as a combination of different elements, each of which played a unique role in its development. One of the key elements was DJing, which involved playing and manipulating records to create new sounds and beats. DJs would use two turntables and a mixer to create a continuous flow of music, often blending together different genres like funk, soul, and disco. Another important element of hip-hop was MCing, which involved rapping or speaking rhythmically over the beats created by the DJs. MCs would use rhyming lyrics and wordplay to tell stories, express their opinions, or hype up the crowd. MCing was often done in a call-and-response format, with the MC engaging with the crowd and getting them involved in the performance. Graffiti writing was also a key element of hip-hop culture. Graffiti artists would create large, colorful murals on the walls of buildings and subway trains, using spray paint and markers to create intricate designs and messages. Graffiti writing was a way for young people to claim their space and assert their identity in a society that often overlooked or marginalized them. Finally, breakdancing was another important element of hip-hop culture. Breakdancing involved a series of acrobatic moves and dance routines, often performed in a freestyle manner. Breakdancers would use the beats created by the DJs to showcase their skills and express themselves creatively. Hip-hop parties were often held in community centers, parks, and abandoned buildings. These were often impromptu gatherings that brought together young people from different neighborhoods and backgrounds. Hip-hop was a way for these young people to come together, express themselves, and create something new and unique. In this way, hip-hop became a form of self-expression, resistance, and empowerment for young people in the Bronx and beyond. Hip-hop was not just a cultural movement, but also a political movement that sought to address the social issues facing young people in the Bronx and beyond. Hip-hop artists used their lyrics and music to bring attention to issues like poverty, racism, police brutality, and inequality. They spoke truth to power and gave voice to the voiceless. Hip-hop emerged in a time when many communities were experiencing economic decline, political neglect, and social dislocation. Young people in the Bronx, in particular, were living in a society that often overlooked or marginalized them. Hip-hop provided a platform for these young people to express their frustrations, their anger, and their aspirations. It allowed them to articulate their experiences and to critique the status quo. Hip-hop also created a sense of community and solidarity among young people who shared similar experiences and struggles. Hip-hop parties and performances brought together young people from different neighborhoods and backgrounds. They shared a common language and a common culture, and they used hip-hop to connect with each other and to build relationships. Hip-hop was a way for these young people to assert their identity, dignity, and creativity in a society that denied them. It allowed them to claim their space and their voice in a world that often silenced them. Hip-hop was a form of resistance and empowerment that gave young people a sense of purpose and belonging. Overall, hip-hop was a powerful cultural and political movement that emerged in response to the social and cultural challenges of its time. It was a voice for the voiceless, a platform for the marginalized, and a critique of the status quo. It gave young people a sense of community and solidarity, and it allowed them to express themselves, to connect with others, and to assert their identity and dignity in a society that often denied them. After its emergence in the Bronx in the 1970s, hip-hop quickly spread to other cities in the U.S., such as Philadelphia, Chicago, and Los Angeles. As it gained popularity, it also began to influence music genres beyond its own, such as pop, rock, and R&B. Hip-hop's impact on music was felt around the world, and it soon became a global culture that transcended race, ethnicity, and nationality. As hip-hop's influence grew, it also began to inspire fashion trends. Baggy clothes, sneakers, and bling became synonymous with hip-hop culture, and these trends soon spread beyond the world of hip-hop to become popular in mainstream fashion. Hip-hop's popularity also made it a language of youth culture that spoke to millions of young people around the world. Hip-hop music, fashion, and lifestyle became a way for young people to express themselves and to connect with others who shared their interests and values. However, hip-hop also became a source of controversy and criticism for its portrayal of violence, sexism, and materialism. Some critics argued that hip-hop glorified gang culture and encouraged violence against women. Others criticized hip-hop for promoting materialism and consumerism, especially through the emphasis on bling and luxury goods. Despite these criticisms, hip-hop remains a vibrant and influential cultural force today. It continues to evolve and to inspire new generations of artists and fans around the world. In conclusion, the social circumstances that gave rise to hip-hop culture were a reflection of the challenges and struggles faced by the African American and Latino communities in the Bronx in the 1970s. These communities experienced poverty, neglect, and dislocation as a result of economic decline, political exclusion, and social marginalization. Despite these challenges, young people in the Bronx found a way to express themselves and to assert their identity through hip-hop. Hip-hop emerged as a powerful form of self-expression, resistance, and empowerment, which allowed young people to make their voices heard and to challenge the status quo. Hip-hop artists used their music and lyrics to address social issues such as poverty, racism, police brutality, and inequality. Hip-hop also created a sense of community and solidarity among young people who shared similar experiences and struggles. As hip-hop gained popularity, it became a global cultural movement that transcended race, ethnicity, and nationality. Hip-hop's influence on music, fashion, art, and politics was felt around the world. However, hip-hop also faced criticism and controversy for its portrayal of violence, sexism, and materialism. Despite these challenges, hip-hop remains a vital and dynamic cultural movement that continues to inspire and challenge us today. It has evolved over the years, but its roots in self-expression, resistance, and empowerment remain strong. Hip-hop continues to be a voice for the voiceless, a platform for the marginalized, and a critique of the status quo. Thanks for watching.